done. Well, what do we got coming up now?
Well, we have our good and great friend, Major General Levy.
Oh, super. He's coming up next.
Our
Okay,
board
good.
of advisors, and he's
Great.
going to have a fascinating discussion with about NASA's CSP program,
Right,
which I
right.
understand nothing about, but I'll understand more after I listen to them.
That's why we put these programs on, right?
Absolutely.
Well, he's got a big smile on his face. Looks like he's ready. Hello, sir. Great to have you aboard this morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for letting me be a part of this today. And what a great opportunity to follow General Alexander and his comments, because I think that'll tie very nicely with the commercialization of space, what NASA has on its mind with respect to the CSP program, and certainly how one of our tech thought leaders and key industry partners, Viasat, can contribute. So really looking forward to our two guests today, Mr. Naffah and Mr. Maughan, as being a part of this, and then seeing where the conversation takes us.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Enjoy. We'll see you soon.
Well, take it away. It's all yours, sir.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
So do we have our buddies?
Good morning, Mike. I see you.
Good morning, General. How are you?
I am better than I deserve. It's great to have you with us. I don't see Eli just yet. Oh, there he is. Brilliant. The miracles of technology. I always wonder who is the puppet master when it comes to pulling the strings based on who's sitting where, et cetera. So I'm glad that you both could join us today. I hope you had a chance to see at least a snippet of Craig Miller and Keith Alexander's last session, the kind of the kickoff for this morning, where they talked about commercialization of space and amongst a bunch of other things, because I think that'll dovetail very nicely with not only what NASA is trying to bring to the conversation, but as importantly, what Viasat brings with its cutting edge technologies and its thought leadership. So since we don't have a ton of time today, if you don't mind, I'm going to just jump right in, because I think that'll really provide the most value for the audience. Thumbs up if you guys are on board with that. All right, we have two thumbs up. Great. So for the audience who might not know, Mr. Naffah is the Communication Services Program Manager. He is at the Glenn Research Station in scenic Cleveland, Ohio. So many people may not know that NASA has a large research facility there, but they do, co-located at the Cleveland Airport. So thanks for being a part of that, and et cetera. And you're on mute. There we go.
Yep.
Awesome. And Mike joins us from Viasat. He's out in California, I believe, and he is the Vice President at Viasat Government Systems for Resilient Space Missions. So thanks for joining us. I think I'm going to start with my colleague from NASA, because we're going to talk a little bit today about some things that may not be on the tip of everyone's tongue, but is absolutely essential in terms of what we do with respect to our space infrastructure. And much like the interstate highway system, without that infrastructure, space commerce and space communication is somewhat thwarted. So perhaps if you could give us maybe a brief background on the CSP, what it is, and what NASA is really trying to achieve here. And then maybe if you could spend a moment or two connecting it to the Tdrs and sort of tease that out a little bit for folks, because they're kind of almost two sides of the same coin in many senses.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Bye-bye.
Okay, good. So I'll start with Tdrs. So that's kind of fundamental, the tracking and data relay satellite system that NASA currently owns and operates. Really started back in the 1980s to support human spaceflight. And really, if you recall back in the early days of the space program, you would have periods that they called LOS, or blackout periods, loss of signal. And they felt like for the shuttle program, they wanted to have continuous coverage. And so it was really designed for the human spaceflight aspect for shuttle. And then it's kind of evolved to other NASA missions to support other NASA missions, including our science missions and really our International Space Station mission as well. So we have three, basically positions within the geostationary orbit. we've got a constellation of spacecraft and in various states of operation at this point. We launched our last Tdrs in 2017, and we don't plan to launch any more. So eventually, the fleet will begin to diminish in capability, and we will have to find another solution for the types of coverage that Tdrs provides. And so that's why CSP, Communication Services Project, was created. And that was really to demonstrate the feasibility of commercial SATCOM. And if you look at what NASA's been doing, especially in the Earth proximity area or low Earth orbit or near Earth orbit, we're seeing a lot of investment by industry, a lot of capability, a lot of infrastructure. And we started with commercial cargo, which we now buy as a commercial service to the International Space Station, commercial crew, and the success that we're now having with being able to finally fly NASA astronauts, not using Russia as a vehicle to get there. And now we're focused on commercial LEO destinations to replace the International Space Station type capability with commercial platforms, and SATCOM is the next logical step. So our strategy is to first of all, we had a 3-phase strategy, and we're in phase 2, which is to demonstrate the capability, and then develop an acquisition plan and acquisition strategy for going out and procuring commercial services in the future that eventually will allow us to free ourselves of the government-owned and operated networks. Hopefully that explains it pretty well.
I think it captures it brilliantly. I think it's important for the audience to know, and this was certainly a key aspect of my time on the NASA Advisory Council, the NAC, which is getting NASA out of the business of doing routine stuff and commercializing that as much as possible, buying things as a service from the commercial ecosystems where appropriate, suitable, safe, and reliable, and freeing NASA to do the unique missions that only NASA can do. And so NASA's really at a bit of an inflection point in its evolution about what it does versus what it buys. And I think this is a really important component. Now, if I recall correctly, the CSP is about a $280 million program writ large. And over the 3 phases you described, I think it runs out to about 2030 or so. And if I'm not mistaken, as part of this solicitation and RFP development, you leaned heavily on industry to bring the best and brightest ideas in terms of what was feasible, what was capable, what was affordable, et cetera. Did I capture that correctly?
Absolutely. I mean, we're about where you said for the demonstration phase, this initial demonstration phase. Our budget continues on out beyond this demonstration phase. So right now our budget is at about $60 million a year to continue to onboard the commercial services for NASA. So okay. Really we're very excited because industry, what we did is we decided to take a different approach, and the approach is based on lessons we learned from the commercial crew and commercial cargo, and that was really to go out and tell industry what it is we need, and really we did that. We defined 6 use cases, and we put all the data, mission data around it, and then projected what we would have in the future, and then really talk to industry about what they're, based on their capabilities and their interests, what they would like to provide as a service. And then once that's demonstrated, then we'll have to adjust and adapt the ops that we do with our missions to accommodate the commercial service. So it's kind of industry focused because we want to be one of many buyers. And so by doing that during this demonstration phase, we're providing maximum intellectual property rights. We're more of an investor. And because of that, we got a tremendous response from industry. For our $278 million, industry is putting in over $1.5 billion worth of cost and risk share. And so we're very excited about that.
That's a great segue to my question for Mike. Mike, as I mentioned, leads Viasat's Resilient Space Mission Group, and Mike is Viasat, who has been an industry leader for quite some time, and one of the 6 companies that are part of this. What in terms of CSP was so intriguing to you, the company, and your piece of the company that said, hey, we need to be a part of this, and we're gonna show up not only with our brain power but with our checkbooks?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and I think this is really exciting. And for Viasat, this has been something we've been looking at for many years. In fact, this stems from, we wrote a white paper in 2017. We sort of jokingly call it the streaming Netflix to the International Space Station white paper. But
I'm sure the ISS people would very much appreciate that.
That's right. But I mean, it was actually, the title was a call to action. And we wrote that for NASA to review, and I'm sure NASA had their own independent studies that they were working on. But and the reason we wrote that was not because there was inaction necessarily on the government side. It was because we saw the tremendous capability that high capacity satellites and commercial investments could offer to NASA and other agencies. Frankly, with the Viasat 3 global constellation going up, this enhanced some of the capabilities that Viasat was going to be offering from a connectivity and communication services perspective, broadening the global footprint. And it stems a lot out of some of the Viasat's pioneering work in mobility connectivity. So in-flight connectivity is something that Viasat has worked quite a bit on for decades, and is providing really trailblazing services in that front. And so if you think about an aircraft traveling and you've got satellite connectivity to it, you could think about providing space mobility services in orbit mobility. So it's not that far of a leap to think about doing that once you have a global constellation at GEO, to be providing that connectivity to these low Earth orbit satellites globally, over the poles, and effectively in just about any orbital regime at low Earth orbit. So we saw this as a natural extension to leverage the goodness from our high capacity satellites and offer enhanced capabilities, enhanced data rates, enhanced scheduling flexibility, even cybersecurity benefits. I know your previous panel talked about cyber, but you're leveraging the commercial cybersecurity elements of that, integrated networking. There's a number of different elements, and frankly, scalability, and then seeding a more commercial space ecosystem that can provide additional services to NASA and its Earth observation and other functions. So we saw this as really a win-win, and something we've been tracking very closely, and are really excited that NASA has stepped up with this program. This has been a long time coming, and we're really happy that we can be a part of it and provide some service to the government.
I've described to people where we are in space as sort of like where the U.S. was with powered aircraft in the early 1900s. We sort of had this emerging capability. We're trying to figure out how to use it. We're trying to figure out how to commercialize it. We're trying to figure out how to regulate it. We're trying to figure out how to leverage it for the best good for mankind. And if you think back to the early 1900s, we figured it out. I'll summarize a bunch of history into a sentence or two. We figured it out, and that really sort of set the pace for the 20th century and the 21st century being the aerospace century for the United States, right? We were sort of the first ones to crack the code and do all of the things I mentioned by partnering not only with government and industry and private financing, et cetera. So Mike, Viasat is one of those thought leaders and early people out on this dance floor as we try to craft this ecosystem to make sure that the 21st century and beyond is the American century in space. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what Viasat brings in terms of its commercial investment capabilities to this conversation, because NASA and other government entities always struggle from they have to go to the board of directors, i.e. Congress, and get money, and that's always a bit of a mercurial exercise, et cetera. But Viasat and others in the CSP and the Tdrs can bring some of their own investment dollars and commercial innovation to the conversation. If you could maybe talk a little bit about how Viasat does that at scale and at pace, that would be really interesting to the audience, I think.
Sure. I mean, so Viasat's a publicly traded company. We can leverage the markets for finance and allocation of that capital for more efficient means that are going to provide, profitable returns for shareholders. So, Viasat's gone through the calculus and the investment profiles for our commercial networks. So the Viasat 3 constellation being critical to that. So effectively, this is another business that can be evolved from that Viasat 3 network that probably when we first envisioned that network, we weren't necessarily targeting space mobility as one of the number one uses. But I think this is going to be, another use case, another business case that's going to continue to support and reinforce the already solid business model that was used for the investment on the capital requirements that are going to be required to put the Viasat 3 constellation up. And if you look at, some of the history of Tdrs, for example, or some of the other NASA specific networks, the capital requirements for that are pretty huge. I mean, they were putting up some of these, very niche, exquisite satellites that provide, 5 gigabits and above type connectivity, 15 gigabits type connectivity in terms of data volumes. And so the Viasat 3 network, 3 geo satellites, is going to be over 3 terabits per second capability. So, I mean, it's orders of magnitude greater. And so to be able to leverage that capacity with a government use case and an already, private investment profile for the capital really is I think a win-win for both the private business to reinforce their business cases to invest that capital, but also for the government to be able to relieve some of the capital requirements that they would put into other capabilities that maybe private sector isn't investing in, that that are more specific and unique to the government mission. So I think this is really sort of a win-win when you think about this public-private partnership, and sort of leverages the best of breeds between the two organizations.
Thanks. We used to have a saying when I was still in active duty: you don't have to own it to benefit from it. And I think that's certainly a really good application of the phrase here in terms of the government doesn't have to own the constellation, but it does have to benefit from it. But Eli, I'll turn back to you and put this question to you. When we would say that sometimes in the Air Force, you would get the pushback, but okay, if I don't have to own it to benefit from it, how do I know it'll be there when I need it? And that's a really important conversation that we should have, right? Particularly since Mike worries about resiliency, and so space resiliency is something we're all concerned about. These are backbone systems that help drive our comms architecture. I'd like to get maybe a few moments of your thought on resiliency, and then based on how much time we have left, I'm going to turn to maybe applications beyond the near space use for Tdrs and CSP, and see what maybe the next step might look like. So maybe a few thoughts on resiliency and how we make sure that we have that assured comm access.
Yeah, that I think is one of the toughest nuts to crack for us. We have missions that go into extended duration, could be over a 15-year period, and certainly the robotic missions in particular, it basically becomes a rock in space if you can't communicate with it. So, JWST, for example, I think was an $11 billion mission, and so that becomes an $11 billion rock if you lose comm. And we just saw the spectacular pictures that are coming back from it, and so higher data rates, obviously, being able to do that, I think industry will allow us that, because there's innovation that will occur. That, when we look at the Tdrs system, as good as it is, it was built in the 80s, and it hasn't changed significantly since then. Okay, and we're basically putting up spacecraft that are similar in nature. There's no cross-linking, so there's a lot of limitations that we as the government have, and industry has far outspent us in investment. So resiliency comes in with long duration. It's cybersecurity, obviously, is a factor. Changing business climate. Whether the businesses are going to continue to want to operate. So one of the things that we're looking at, in particular, is the business plans that industry has, that Viasat has in particular, to know that they're committed to do this, that they're committed to be there and to provide this service. We want to look at the service level agreements and how we go out and acquire these services. And so assured capability is a big part of this, and potential for interoperability. We're not there yet. I think there's baby steps that we need to take. First, we need to have services, but just like the cell phones, for example, in the early days, when if you saw that you were roaming, that was like death. Okay, don't you dare roam. That's going to cost me. Okay, and so then industry got together and said, hey, if we solve this problem and make it seamless, people will buy more cell phones. And so we're hoping that once a market is established and services are starting to be provided, I think industry will get together, and we're going to encourage and facilitate that, to develop standards that they will benefit from, and that will increase the market share. And I think that's going to be the key for us for a resilient capability. Obviously, the cybersecurity factors into that very strongly, and that's a big component of demonstrating what they're going to do. So hopefully that answered your thought there on resiliency and how important it is for NASA.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that with us. I want less bandwidth, said no person ever. I want less reliability in my bandwidth, said no person ever. Right? It becomes almost a bit of unobtainium in terms of how much bandwidth can you achieve, and how much platform reliability and stability can you get to. So it's always you're always chasing tomorrow, so to speak, in those terms, which is good, because that's where innovation comes from, and that's what the theme of this entire series is about: space innovation, pushing the cutting edge, and ensuring that the 21st and 22nd and beyond centuries are American centuries in terms of space capability, both commercially and from a national security perspective. Mike, I know Viasat has a space data relay solution that it is kind of on your radar scope, so to speak. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and how you see that evolving, and how that might give NASA some additional capabilities, not only in the near Earth, but maybe a little beyond that as well.
Sure. I think, this developing space data relay capability is really, I think, one of the first and foremost elements of the demonstration that we want to provide. But and I think, to the resiliency point and to the higher bandwidth point, this is going to enhance a lot of that, right? Because we've got that high capacity satellite, so you're going to it enables more flexibility in terms of bandwidth. It's also, it's got the scalability element. So no longer are we talking about single digit space vehicles that you're going to be able to provide connectivity solutions to. You could provide, connectivity up to hundreds or maybe even thousands of space vehicles at any time on some of these systems on demand. So in terms of scheduling perspective, it's a really quite a different paradigm shift. So I think from enabling not only the NASA missions, but scalability, I think is going to be huge. Flexibility is going to be huge. I think the resiliency piece, right, is that as you look at not only NASA missions, but other government missions and other commercial missions, having a LEO to GEO terminal service provides significant resiliency, because now you have an additional network. For instance, the Space Development Agency, they're developing a number of these low Earth orbit constellations, the transport layer, their tracking layer. A lot of that hinges upon laser intersatellite links. If you put a LEO to GEO space terminal, an RF link, that would enhance reliability and resiliency tremendously, right? It gives you another option to route data over. So I think these hybrid adaptive networks, something that Viasat's been talking about quite a bit, something like this really enables that for any mission across applications. So there's that piece. And then from the Viasat perspective, we're also want to leverage terrestrial network. So we have what's called real-time Earth network. So we've got a global network of terrestrial terminals. So you can do these, direct to Earth download of information, which is pretty traditional in the norm today for most satellites. But with a space terminal and a direct to Earth capability, we have the ability to basically provide arbitrage across both latency and cost and volume that we can now seamlessly kind of arbitrage between a direct to Earth link, a LEO to GEO link, and really provide significant flexibility to users. And so we see that as a really unique element of this integrated network that Viasat can offer. And I think we'll go a long way to trying to get this service off the ground in many ways, because it does offer some cost trades that probably don't exist if you just have a space only kind of network. So we see a lot of enhancements across the board.
Great. I appreciate you putting kind of ribbon on that. I think about it from a warfighting and national security perspective, which also complicates our adversaries' problem set of how to deny or degrade or disable us from having space comms access and denying that infrastructure backbone that's so essential. I would love to spend about another 3 hours just peeling this onion more and more, but sadly our time is drawn to a close. Mike and Eli, thank you a ton for doing this, for being a part of this public-private partnership that will assure America's access to and success in space for not only the decades ahead, but for the centuries ahead. So my thanks to both of you for being here today and for being part of America's Future Series. And to the team back in the studio, I'll pass the microphone back to you, gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, and gentlemen, to all of you. Mike and Eli, that was just great. Thank you so very, very, very much for being a part of this on this Tuesday. We very, very much appreciate it. And I'll tell you what, General Levy, you might have a new position. This was great. You did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for... No,
my pleasure. Can't hold a candle to y'all, for sure.
You did just fine. Thank you so much. And again, certainly thanks for all of your service. But more importantly this morning, thanks for what you did. So continued success and stay well. Thanks, my friend.